Yep, and we're live.
Okay, great. I'd like to call the BIA Advisory Committee meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and are temporarily archived on the city's website, as well as a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Roll call. I'll now commence a roll call. Please indicate your presence when I call your name. Jude Zabo. Christina Geisler.
Here.
Carrie Jarvie.
Here.
Lisa Anderson. Up here. Me, I'm here. I guess Michael is not. Heidi Vanderquack.
Here.
Bender Chug, not. Emily Burton. Susan Penny.
I am present.
Tracy McKinnon.
Here.
Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair, there are no changes to the agenda.
May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented? Christina and Susan. Is there anyone opposed? Carried. Are there any declarations of interest? May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the May 11th, 2021 meeting as presented? Heidi. Carrie. Any opposed? Carried. We have staff presentation by Special Offense Advisory Committee. Sarah Linfoot Fazina, Cultural Project Specialist, is here with an update on the seat. Welcome, Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. For those of you I haven't met, I'm sure we've emailed quite a bit over the last year. I'm Sarah, and I work in the Recreation Division, and I work with our city's Special Events Advisory team. So our team is made up of approximately 12 reviewers from fire department, police, parks, public health. We also have a whole bunch of other reps that attend meetings and advise on permitting and permissions for events. So I get the pleasure to work with all of them and to work with you in making sure that your events are safe and successful. So thanks, Julia, for inviting me here today. I have a small agenda, but also happy to answer questions at the end. I didn't know if I should share my screen, Angela, or I have a presentation that...
Absolutely, you can share your screen, Sarah.
Okay, perfect. Let me just... I'm used to working on a double screen here. It's hard with it's hard with one. Okay. Let's see what happens here. Alrighty. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep, that's perfect.
That's great. Okay. So I've put our email address here, seat@hamilton.ca, and also our website, hamilton.ca/event planning. Trying to keep that as updated as possible as we go along. But yeah, any questions, you can always email me directly, or seat@hamilton.ca. I also answer those emails. This is the agenda I put together for today. These are some of the things that, some items that I'd heard, perhaps there had been some questions about, but also some things I wanted to share with you as well. So we'll go through it, and then if you have any questions, happy to answer them at the end. Thought I would start just with a quick overview of what the status of event approvals are currently at the city. So basically, we had heard last year was a really fun year to try to figure out for events, and we had, the city of Hamilton didn't really want to cancel events outright for a long period of time. And after July 2nd, we actually didn't have any event cancellations, and we're trying to work within the provincial guidelines to see what we could make possible. And we had heard through a survey that we did later in the year that this was a bit difficult for some event organizers, that they really wanted to have some direction from the city. And so we came up with for 2021 a schedule of when we could let event organizers know whether they could proceed with their planning for in-person events. And so the city's Emergency Operations Center approved this schedule back in January. And really the timelines are pretty much every 2 months. We're looking at the next set of events and seeing what is possible based on where we're at with the province and the provincial guidelines, as well as our own municipal guidelines. And so at the moment, we have events canceled up until the end of July. The city's Emergency Operations Center reviewed June and July events back in May. This was their direction based on how things were going in terms of number of gathering people in a gathering. And so this is the status that we're at right now. We will be looking at August and September events. I'm doing that right now, actually. We'll have a decision by July 1st from the from EOC, and then for October, November, and December, we would have direction by September 1st. So just trying to do it in smaller intervals. Didn't want to cancel, events until, say, after Labor Day. Wanted to be able to be a bit flexible and allow for some things to happen should we be able to gather. So this is currently our where we're at. We do have some exceptions, obviously. I've worked with some of you on these exceptions. The farmers market in Waterdown, the pedestrianized open streets for Barton and for Locke Street. So some of these things are still coming through us and are being approved by EOC, but they're on a case-by-case basis. This is, I wanted to add the community event request form to our agenda because I don't think that I was ever able to share this information with the BIAs formally. And so it was something that happened that was exciting, and it began at the beginning of last year, and then lots of things changed. And so we didn't really get to discuss, but we had been hearing from event organizers for years, and a lot of the BIAs as well, that they were really looking for a more simple application for smaller events that were happening. So these would be events that, say, would have a few things like maybe some sound and a few small tents and food. And traditionally, they had to go through SEAT, which is a longer form. There are more requirements. It requires the review of this team and takes time for approval, where people were looking for something more simple for these smaller events, or what we would call community event requests. So at the beginning of last year, we launched our new community event request form. We were able to separate out about half of the events that would come to SEAT for approval, so half being about 200, and redirect people into the community event request stream. This application form is online. It's a web-based form. You go on, you can fill it out, and submit your COVID response plan, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And it goes directly to staff via email. And a lot of these requests are for park bookings. So work directly with my colleague Deb, who books the parks, and that's it. There's no additional approvals by SEAT, for example. So this is really, I think, and I'd like to hear from those who have used it, I think it's really helped people get their requests in quickly, don't have to do it within, we don't need 60 days notice for these smaller events. As long as the spaces are available for rental, it makes it a lot easier. So just that was something that happened at the beginning of that last year that we were really excited about, but then couldn't really share with anybody except, on a case-by-case basis. So a lot of the things that happen in the BIAs fit into this category. I would say the only things are, road closures and those that have an estimated, like a larger attendance wouldn't comply, but the rest could come through here. I mentioned just briefly that we do have a COVID-19 requirement, planning requirement this year. So for both major events that would come to seat and community events that come through the shorter process, we require a plan about how you will prevent the spread of COVID-19. We created this document last year. It was sort of, there was a lot of back and forth with public health last year when we were able to have a few events starting in August. And we really wanted to formalize something so that people knew what was being asked of them or what was expected, what kind of information. And so we have this template online. It's on our website at hamilton.ca/event planning that you can use to submit your plan with your applications. So it won't, when you're filling out your applications, you won't be able to submit until you have something to us about COVID-19. So this is just a snippet of what the document looks like. Moving on, this is a very different topic. And I know that there had been some questions about hostile vehicle mitigation, so I didn't want to miss it today when I was here. There have been a lot of questions. I know there were some members from the BIA who had attended a workshop. I guess it must have been either at the beginning of 2020 or late in 2019 about hostile vehicle mitigation and doing emergency planning for events. So we do have a larger team above seat that looks at mostly road events that would close a road, that would have barricades, and would have a lot of people attending. This is where we were seeing, worldwide, also locally, some incidents happening where whether, intentional or not, there are people being injured by vehicles or the like in a street closure, in a gathering setting. So for years, we've been talking about how we can better prepare for these types of incidences. And then COVID came and our focus was redirected. And so what the intent is, we don't currently, I just want to make this really clear, we don't currently have any specific bylaws or requirements for road closure equipment to be used for events. This is something that we're still investigating. We'd really like to take to our senior leadership team and to council for discussion about how we would like to move forward with what we would like to ask event organizers to have. But currently we don't actually have any requirements. And so the process is still the same as it has always been. If you have a road closure for your event, you're working with your third-party road closure company to make sure that you have the safest plan put together possible. And the city team gets a copy of that traffic control plan and all of those things. And so really that's where we're at this moment in time. We're hoping to have something to SLT by the end of the year, really a recommendation report to say, best practices, what other municipalities are doing, what other cities across the world are doing, making sure that we can have events as safe as possible, especially in a road setting where there's the possibility for something that could happen to a large amount of people. And so we recognize that the equipment's expensive. We know that you need to know this information for budgeting purposes. And please rest assured that you will get plenty of notice if there are any changes to what is required and what we're asking event organizers to do. So at this moment in time, please, continue to proceed as you always have with your third-party road closure company. And just a quick slide on the schedule for 2022 application submissions. So typically we try to have our new application up by the end of the year. We open it up to our returning events. So those that are pre-existing from the prior year or In this case, we're even going back to 2019 at this point, just because there have been so many cancellations. We open that up for people to apply, and then have the links available for our new events in 2022 in January. So as you'll see here, currently we're actually just working on redoing our website, but these are the three sort of buckets that apply to events. General rentals are really for private gatherings, so birthday parties, meetings, things like that, where you might rent something at a rec center, or even park rentals. You can apply this way for your private function. And then the other two, community and major, are really for our public events. We went through community events in quite a lot of detail. So there are the smaller ones. There's the very simple event request form. And then major events is where we really require more oversight from our city division. So need that 60-day window to make sure that everything is in place. You have all the permits and licenses for having alcohol and large tents and temporary structures. So those are the three sort of main categories. We really see private versus public, right? Private really has a very simpler, shorter process, and then community and major events have some more eyes on the events, just because of liability and public participation. So. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Oh, sorry, Susie, you're muted.
I'm one of those. Susan, go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a comment and a question. First of all,
Okay.
thanks for all of your help in getting the Watered Down Farmers Market. I couldn't have been more pleased with the support that we got from all levels of the city to do that. So I know that you were my first call, and you kind of helped me push that through to all the other levels. So I wanted to thank you. I just wanted to ask, for some of the events with these different timelines as we head into the fall, where we're still tentative and on the fence of it. You mentioned the 60 days for seat. I can't remember if you said the timeline for the community events. I think some of us that may move forward with planning, we won't know exactly what those events are going to look like yet. So where we might want to book the park or get the application process started, what we do for food could be completely up in the air until we know kind of where we stand on things. So what's your best recommendation for that? Because if we fill out an application that has details of something that's not going to be possible, we don't want to get turned down for that. On the same hand, if it does open up, we want to be able to do the things that we'd like to do. So do we add to the application later? Do we put everything that we want in and hope that if things are there, we can do it? I'm just kind of knowing that things have been so fluid and are changing all the time. How would you suggest we approach that?
Yeah, fair enough. And just to your question about community events, there is no requirement in terms of time. So those can be submitted. Obviously, the more notice we have, the better. A couple of weeks is always great, because at least we can get the park booked, make sure it's available, make sure park staff is around as well. But in terms of seat, 60 days is our normal way of operating, but we know that things are changing and applications are changing. And so we're definitely being more flexible about what we're able to accommodate. So my best recommendation would be, if you were filling out a seat app, I would just start a draft copy, go in and update it as you're going along. I can see even when they're in draft form, so I know that there's something that's being worked on and that will come in eventually. And of course, reach out if there's any questions. But yeah, as soon as you feel comfortable enough to submit it, you have most of the information that you have, submit it. You can always add later. But I understand you don't want to send something in that is completely shot in the dark, right? So I think, especially this year, there's going to be a lot more flexibility in terms of when we get those applications, as long as you have enough time to do what you need to do from your end, right, in terms of getting the appropriate permits.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? I'll just pass the chair to Susan for a second. I have a quick comment, and question actually. So for a community event, like, what is the attendance size of what would be considered a community event?
So less than 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for those of us that are doing ongoing bigger events each year, we have asked for a streamlined application process for as long as I've been here now for those, especially if they're repeat every single year, nothing's changing.
Yeah.
Has the city considered that at all?
Absolutely, we have considered and trying to work on a solution. We currently have limitations with the software that we're using for the seat application. So we are looking actually at some alternate solutions for that. But I understand that frustration, Susie, because a lot of events, it's the exact same thing year after year, and you have to go in and fill it out again, which I understand is frustrating. So that's certainly something that we've talked about, and hoping that we can move to something simpler also for the major events.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Me, please, Susie.
Lisa.
Hi there. Hi,
Hey,
Sarah.
Lisa.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
I have a quick question for you, and just to understand your process. And anyway, just before Buskerfest 2020, we received an email from a local group who claimed to have an approved seat application for the same weekend as Buskerfest within our festival. Right. So it ended up, everything was canceled anyway because it was last year. So, but I wanted to follow up with you, and we can do it offline. Just what the process is like, from your side for approving things such as that on the same weekend as another festival. I mean, the Buskerfest committee had a lot of concerns about our liability, about how with another event happening within our event. They wanted to work together, fair enough. So, but there was a high level of uncomfortable with letting that happen. So wondering again what the process is on your end for approving smaller things like that within larger things. Maybe it was an oversight, maybe, I don't know. And how in the future I can check if things are like that are being processed. Like years ago, we used to get notifications of seat applications within our area, or actually they would come by ward, and we stopped receiving those notices. And I believe privacy was the issue. But if something needed to be discussed or headed off or dealt with before approval is given, then I was wondering how we can do that.
Yeah, so there's a few things there. And yeah, I think we should talk offline about it because I wasn't aware of anything within an event. So anytime we would get a request like that, we would make sure that they were connecting with the person who's organizing the larger event, right? I wouldn't want to see anything happening within someone's event without them knowing. The only thing I could think of would be, a larger event that maybe there was a park nearby and there was a park permit issued for something else that was happening within the park. But I can't imagine anything else like that. So that's to say, we have a schedule of events that we earmark for our annuals every year, right? So keeping an eye on traditionally what weekend event organizers are having their events, and working with our partners in tourism as well when we have these larger one-time events that come through, to make sure that we're able to accommodate or at least make them aware that we have annual events that are going on, and resources are going to be a challenge. So we do keep this ongoing list, making sure that we're giving our first, bookings or our preference to our annual events, because we know how important they are and that they're longstanding. So I can assure you from my side, I'm always aware of what's going on and trying to connect with people when there appears that there might be a conflict. Obviously, last year and this year has been a bit different in that way. But yeah, continuing to work with you guys to make sure that there aren't conflicts is very important to us, and making sure that, you know, people, if they're using certain spaces, they have the permits, and then that way there's no doubt about who is using the space. So
Right.
but yeah, Lisa, if you want to work offline on that, because I'm interested to hear a little bit more, maybe we can do that.
Okay, that'd be great, because then I could report back to the board about exactly what happened, because I know once we get back to normal, it'll come back up. So that would be great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Are there any more questions? Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the staff presentation? Susan and Lisa. Is there any opposed? Carried. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thanks.
Brian Hollingworth, Director of Transportation, Planning and Parking, and Amanda McCleven, Manager of Parking Operations and Initiatives, are here with an update on the parking master plan. Go ahead.
Great, it's Brian here. While Amanda's firing up the presentation, I'll just say thanks for having us here. This is probably our third or fourth time that we've presented in various fashions on the parking master plan to this group. As Amanda will outline, we're at the final stages. Nothing's written in stone yet, so it's perfect timing to get any last comments on our draft plan. And Amanda will walk you through what that plan entails.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Advisory Committee, for having us this morning. I'm going to leave my video off because WebEx and my webcams don't seem to get along very well. So I'm going to share my screen here, I think, if I can. Okay, hopefully everybody can see this.
That looks perfect, Amanda.
Perfect. Okay, so again, you know, we're here today to deliver a presentation of the draft parking master plan and the recommendations that have sort of come out of that plan. And this is sort of a final round of consultation to sort of summarize our results and go forward with recommendations after we hear some final feedback from our stakeholders. So as part of this update, we will reestablish the study purpose and scope. We'll present the findings to date, and then we'll open the floor for questions and facilitated discussion. So in terms of where we are in this study, we are here near the end, second round of public consultation, after we've assessed existing conditions and best practices, forecasted a number of future scenarios, and developed a set of general principles and recommendations, which I will get to towards the end of the presentation. So the Hamilton Parking Master Plan aims to examine existing parking operations, project future parking demand, provide direction for parking policy, planning, operations, and enforcement that align with other citywide transportation policies, and help meet the parking system's evolving parking needs. I just wanted to note that this study does not include, you know, parking ratios for things like new developments, which is related but a separate study. By way of background, what we're looking at here is both on-street and off-street parking facilities, including maintenance, technologies, finances, and enforcement. We're focusing here on the downtown study area, as well as the 13 specific BIAs shown here. The Hamilton Municipal Parking System manages on-street and off-street parking operations throughout the city of Hamilton, including supply and demand, maintenance, technology, finances, and enforcement. Next, we'll review the existing conditions throughout the city's BIAs. Note that this analysis is based on surveys conducted in November 2019, prior to the impacts of COVID being felt in Hamilton. As shown in the plots on this slide, peak parking demand in downtown Hamilton was found to occur around noon on weekdays, where about 80% of surveyed parking spaces were occupied. This is below capacity, but in practice, this means that many facilities will feel effectively full to someone driving around searching for a parking space. So essentially in parking, we tend to use 85% capacity as the the satisfactory threshold of being full. So here we're at 80%, but being at 80% still means that there are areas of downtown parking that are full, quite effectively full all of the time, since it's an average. So it's important to emphasize as well that this is peak demand. So parking demand throughout the rest of the day was not as high, falling to around 35% occupied by 6 p.m. Weekends, we saw much lower demand, peaking around just 30% occupancy. Again, this was all captured prior to COVID-19. And so what you're seeing on the streets right now may look very different than what this picture looks like on your screen. However, there is an expectation that, once things begin to reopen and employees, some or all, come back to work in the downtown core, we will return to similar levels. So next, we'll quickly summarize the results of the first round of consultation. Phase 1 consultation activities aim to identify existing issues, needs, and desired study outcomes. The following activities were completed in winter 2020. So we did public and stakeholder surveys. We had a map-based consultation tool. Public consultation number 1 took place, and we did some stakeholder interviews. So anyone from, Mohawk to McMaster to some of the business associations within the city, councilors. We tried to get to as many people as we possibly could to discuss what their parking needs and concerns were. So some common messages we heard from this round of consultation were the need to improve the user experience for parking payment, and that parking operations should be self-funded. So that's the cost of the system should be paid by those who park, which is currently what our system is right now. Some respondents also pointed out that it was often cheaper to pay for parking than for transit. So this is not great overall, because it acts as it disincentivizes people from taking more sustainable modes of transportation. And lastly, we were already hearing from other, people in the city that the use of curbside space, especially in places like the downtown core and BIA areas where we have pop-up patios and we have deliveries and this increase in demand for curbside space, certainly people were wanting us to do something about it and take a look at it. So the next step in the study was to look at best practices. What are other comparator municipalities doing, and what can we learn from them that we can apply in Hamilton? Our best practices research examined a range of cities, both larger and smaller than Hamilton, and also drew on overall industry practices. So we reviewed a range of topic areas, from how other parking systems operate financially to what types of technologies they are implementing to help manage their parking supply. When it comes to financial operations, we found that all comparator municipalities currently operate or have direction to move to operate a financially sustainable self-funded model. So the costs of the parking system are borne by those using it. This is currently the case in Hamilton as well, and serves to reaffirm the importance of long-term financial sustainability of the Hamilton municipal parking system. We also looked at parking pricing. So Hamilton recently increased our on-street meter parking rates to $2 an hour as of last summer. So that's now in line with comparator municipalities who were averaging about $1.90 per hour. However, the off-street hourly rate and permit rates in Hamilton were found to be substantially lower. So we're at $1.50 per hour, and on average, so about $57 per month, versus $2.18 in other municipalities per hour and $97.64 per month. So we also know that these prices in comparator municipalities vary by location, which reflects variation in demand, a practice we refer to here as location-based pricing. And the City of Hamilton does have some location-based pricing. So for example, if you're parking in an off-street lot downtown, that's going to be a little bit more expensive than maybe parking in Dundas, and that's really just to reflect the demand. Cash in lieu programs, which is where developers pay the city cash in exchange for reducing the number of parking spaces required as part of the development, is a strategy that tends to exist in larger cities and intensification areas. So when it comes to on-street accessible parking, we found many comparator municipalities had a similar system where requests can be made and reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but also that the costs for these permits covering operating costs were in line with costs for non-accessible residential permits in order to reduce potential misuse of the system. In terms of enforcement, we found some comparative municipalities were adopting license plate recognition-based enforcement systems, which is something that we are hoping to adopt here in Hamilton very, very soon. And this helps to improve efficiency and coverage of enforcement to make sure that the rules, are being followed and we're getting compliance. Compliance is extremely important in terms of safety. We also found that resident and temporary visitor permits to be very common in other municipalities, and many other municipalities were moving to digital payment systems to facilitate this process, something that we are also currently working on in our operation, and we're hoping to tender out within the next few months, is moving to that digital type payment system and people being able to access permits more accessibly by going online. And lastly, we found many of these comparator municipalities are looking to the future. They're doing this by minimizing investment in things like new parking garages. And instead, they're looking for alternative solutions like securing public parking access to existing underutilized private facilities. And that manages future risk and helps promote financial sustainability over time. We're also exploring new technologies such as EV charging, and we're currently in the middle of a project to install 40 new EV chargers in the city, or 20. What is it, Brian? It's 24 dual head chargers leading to 48 spaces since they're dual head. They're also exploring curbside management and parking occupancy monitoring as well. So the results of this review form a solid foundation to make sure Hamilton is at the front of the pack when it comes to parking practices, and will inform the final recommendations of this study. Finally, we looked at what the future holds for parking supply and demand in Hamilton. Parking operations in Hamilton are expected to evolve as the city continues to grow and travel patterns of residents and visitors change. Each of these factors can vary, but identifying a range of likely outcomes for each and combining them into a number of potential scenarios can provide insights into future needs and opportunities for Hamilton's parking operations. Downtown Hamilton parking supply is projected to decrease by about 700 spaces due to redevelopment of surface lots. In general, future parking supply challenges are expected in downtown Hamilton. As a note, this isn't specifically a downtown study. We did look at parking across the city, inclusive of all of the BIA areas, but just to focus on downtown specifically to show that there will be challenges that arise partially from anticipated parking supply loss and continued reliance on personal vehicles as the main mode of transportation. So citywide parking operations are also projected to approach capacity as outlying communities continue to expand and attract a large share of new residents and jobs. So we came up with 4 scenarios. The first scenario is what happens if we do nothing, if we just keep it the status quo. We looked at how each of these scenarios sort of performed financially, but also through supply and demand, what that looked like. Does it help address our parking deficiencies? So in scenario 1, which is again the status quo scenario, where we only do price increases at the rate of inflation, It generates revenues above costs by the narrowest of margins. And as a result, under this scenario, the financial health of HMPS would be susceptible to future uncertainty and may require additional funding from the city to maintain and operate existing systems. So this scenario also provides the least flexibility of all the scenarios for HMPS to strategically reinvest in the parking system to plan for and meet the needs of future demands, such as electric vehicle charging stations, just as one example. Scenario 1 also cannot fully accommodate expected future demand, address localized deficiencies in supply, or support the city's goal related to transportation sustainability. Scenario 2 is scenario 1, but gives us a little bit more flexibility when it comes to how we price parking. So, we add a little harmonized pricing framework where facilities are priced by location a little bit more than they are right now. So in general, rates are higher downtown and they'd be lower in outlying BIA areas, for example. Rate increases in this scenario are similar to scenario 1. So we're still doing rate increases based upon inflation, but as it gives you a little bit of a reference, a space that costs $2 an hour today would cost $2.25 in 2025 and $2.50 in 2030. So both scenario 1 and 2 give us revenues that are greater than our expenses, but they don't allow for future reinvestment that may be necessary. So scenario 2 also sees sort of the same issues as scenario 1, where it just can't accommodate the deficiencies in the supply and demand of the parking system. With scenario 3, and you're going to see those 4 check marks across the board, we found scenario 3 to be optimal in terms of, addressing all of these needs, being financially sustainable, so we can continue to, share our monies with the BIAs. We can continue to give back to the levy, and we can continue to cover capital costs, whether we're, doing repairs to facilities or we're, bringing on new technologies. We found scenario 3 basically gave us that sweet spot. And so for reference, in a lot that costs $2 an hour today, it would be $2.50 in 2025 and $3 an hour in 2030. So it's just a slight increase from scenario 2. I know there's a lot of numbers here and a lot of scenarios, so I don't want to continue to bore you. So we found that scenario 3 was optimal. Scenario 4 is everything in the first 3 scenarios, except for scenario 4, we included the building of 380 parking spaces into that scenario and what that would look like in terms of like building a new parking facility. This becomes very difficult because if we were to build a 380 space parking garage, we'd be looking at $15 to $20 million to build that, which is significant. And this places a lot of future financial pressure on the Hamilton municipal parking system, and it would require additional funding from the city to build this facility. So we are taking this plan in a direction which doesn't see us build new parking supply, but what it does is it puts in programs and policies to manage the existing supply that we have now. And this is basically just showing how scenario 3 works financially from 2019 all the way to 2030. So again, it's the most appropriate long-term scenario to be considered for sustainability of the parking operation through to 2030. This scenario maintains a stable capital reserve, maintains or increases annual levy contributions, and provides a financial cushion against future financial uncertainty. So this is the most prudent scenario financially, but it also best addresses existing and future needs of drivers by maintaining the availability of parking space. And this is achieved by right-sized pricing. We also call this dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is different than the location-based pricing that we see now in the city of Hamilton. So basically, that means that prices for parking, whether it's parking in a parking lot or on street, are more reflective of demand. So where the highest demand is, the price will be highest to try to curb that demand and spread parking out more evenly so that we don't have people circling and circling and circling for parking, which I know some of you in some of our areas, whether it's James Street, whether it's Lock Street, we see this continuously is the circling for parking, and that's basically because of demand. So in the lower demand areas, the prices will be lower, and they also can change every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks. It's all based upon, what's the seasonal demand. We take all of that into account, and we price it effectively, and we continue to change those prices as demand increases or decreases. So we've come up with 4 general principles as a way to organize what we think are the key elements of this plan. We've got financial sustainability, economic development, environmental sustainability, and resiliency. So it's critical that the study recommends helping Hamilton maintain a parking system that is self-funded while providing fair and transparent pricing policies for all users. We understand that parking policy can have a big impact on day-to-day activities, and we want to make sure everyone, even if they may not love all of our recommendations, still feel like they are getting a fair shake when it comes to what we're putting forward. We want to support local businesses, and this is, why we're here talking to you today. We want to stimulate development by efficiently managing our parking supply and demand. No matter how many improvements are made to transit or active transportation facilities, there will always be a demand for parking, both now and in the future. And so we must have a realistic plan to accommodate this demand in an efficient and effective manner. That being said, the city recognizes the importance of responding to the climate emergency and is committed to taking action to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. As transportation is a major source of emissions, this plan should support the city in moving forward and moving towards a more sustainable and environmentally friendly alternative in terms of other modes of transportation. And lastly, this study should help the city prepare for an uncertain future. The study was initiated before the impacts of COVID were being felt here in Hamilton, but these impacts and the impacts of the future events that we cannot predict here today will certainly change how we travel and park in the future. I won't spend too much time going through all of the 20 or so recommendations because I know this is quite a long presentation. But under financial sustainability, we've come up with a few recommendations that we feel are necessary. And again, these are not set in stone. That's one of the reasons why we're here talking to you today is this is a flexible plan that can change over time, but we felt like these were the things that were very important to adopt predictable rate increases, manage utilization in all HMPS off-street parking facilities through pricing. Again, going back to that dynamic pricing model that I was just speaking about, the possibility of extending paid parking to 7-day-a-week operations. So this one's an interesting one because we often get calls on the weekend for parking enforcement, but we do not work, for example, on Sundays. And so it's hard to have parking enforcement 7 days a week if we don't have paid parking 7 days a week. They kind of go hand in hand. So it's certainly something that, we're looking, it doesn't necessarily have to be 7 days a week, but, we're certainly looking at potentially changing hours of operation in terms of paid parking. On-street prices have to be increased because that parking is more in demand and you want short-term turnover. And so on-street parking should be priced appropriately over off-street. And so those are just some of the things that we're looking at under financial sustainability. In terms of economic development, so again, we'd like to expand the supply of on-street paid parking, knowing that we're going to have a loss, especially in the core, but also in other BIA areas as they continue to develop. There's certainly a loss of off-street parking. So we'd like to repurpose that supply in some way on the street. So right now, staff are looking at areas around the city where we have the potential to add on-street paid parking, especially around BIA areas to support businesses. We'd like to review the HMPS and BIA revenue sharing formula. We'd like to see if there are additional ways that we can increase those contributions and give back. So, the higher the more effective we price parking, especially in BIA areas, the higher the revenue will be, and therefore we'll be able to give back more to BIAs. So we'd like to review those formulas. We'd like to get better wayfinding and digital tools, and this is just part of the customer experience that will lead to better economic development and help businesses. If we allow people to find parking more effectively, and it's a better experience for them, they will keep on parking, and you will have an increase in business. We'd like to do things like explore the public use of private facilities during off-peak times. So that may mean there's a restaurant, in downtown Hamilton that doesn't have a need for parking until 6 or 7 p.m. And so can we share that parking during the day? Maybe we use it as employee parking from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then we turn that parking lot back over for their use in the evening. So we need to look at potential opportunities like that instead of building brand new parking supply, which I said earlier is very expensive. Pursuing joint parking opportunities with private development. So as development continues to happen and densification continues to happen, we're really looking at what are the opportunities there to add more public parking supply in those new developments, whether they're condos or otherwise. Implementing license plate recognition software to improve enforcement, and continue to identify opportunities to leverage city-owned surface parking lots for new integrated development. In terms of environmental sustainability, it's a very important part of this plan. So we want to start to adopt pricing that actually incentivizes sustainable transportation. I think earlier in the presentation, I mentioned that we found that paying for parking is cheaper than paying for transit. So as long as that continues to happen, there's definitely going to be a disconnect between people still driving single occupancy vehicles or single occupant vehicles and, taking a bus or taking, a car share. We'd like to introduce a flexible multi-pass. That's something that we're looking at right now in terms of permits. Many municipalities across Canada know that after COVID, whatever that looks like, it may mean that employees aren't back to their normal 9 to 5 in office. And so we're looking at ways that we could introduce some sort of flexible passes where maybe you only pay for 15 days per month, for example, because that's all you need, instead of paying an entire month's cost. This has some technology in it that we're currently sort of trying to research and understand how it would work operationally. But we are hoping to get there sooner rather than later. We're looking at reviewing cash in lieu policies to support transportation demand management and sustainable mobility. We're looking at going over some of our policies like residential boulevard parking agreements. We're looking at greening our facilities, so applying low impact materials and doing some new sustainable designed elements in surface parking lots. We've got our EV charging stations kind of up and going, and we're going to develop a comprehensive plan around that. And again, continue to expand bicycle and other micro mobility parking. So that means can we get some more bike cages in some of our parking lots to support more cycling? How do we support cycling infrastructure from a parking perspective? Can we do some walkable paths from bicycle or cycling routes to parking structures? These are all things that we can do in terms of environmental sustainability. And lastly, and under our last general principle is resiliency. So, how are we going to be resilient over time, over the next 10 years? We're hoping that new municipal parking should be integrated within developments and have the ability to be converted to alternate uses in the future. This is sort of happening all over the place across Canada and in North America in general, is the integration and redevelopment of things like parking garages to have different types of levels of retail environments, office space, and all kinds of different uses within the same structure. We're sort of moving towards or away from that traditional parking garage, for example, and we're kind of trying to repurpose buildings to become more usable over time. We'd like to develop policies and regulations for managing curbside use and payment. I think over COVID-19, what we've seen is there's a massive demand for curb space. And I'm sure all of you have seen it as well. We worked very hard last year to do short-term parking for pickups and drop-offs. We looked at removing certain traffic and parking regulations so that we could implement better curbside regulations to help businesses along. And we'd like to continue to do that. So we'll be looking at implementing a comprehensive plan for curbside management. And that's everything from, your Uber Eats to your Canada Post, to your just short-term customers coming in for 10 minutes and just wanting to pick something up really quick. We have to manage all of those uses and demand for the very small amount of curbside space that we have. And then, monitoring how automated vehicles evolve related to the impact of parking operations. This may seem very far off in the future, but I assure you that automated vehicles are something that's very much around the corner. We've been talking about it at conferences for the last 5 years, and the technology is there, the cars are there. It's actually just more on the policy side. We're a little bit slower to respond, and we have to be very cautious, and that's the only reason why you probably don't see them out there now, but that is around the corner. And so how will that impact parking operations going forward? So we're here at the second round of public consultation, and we're finalizing our recommendations. And we'd like, your feedback on our recommendations, and then of course we'll go forward and go back to council to finalize our recommendations. And that is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for sitting there while I jabbered on for so long.
Amanda, if I may just add, there is a detailed report online. We can send around the link, but if you go to the April 20th meeting of the Planning Committee, all the reports are there, extensive background reports with all of the data, all of the results of the consultation, and the review of best practices if anyone wants to take a deeper dive.
Okay, great. Can we pull the presentation down?
Yes, I am doing that right now. There you go.
Okay, great. Are there any questions or comments? Lisa?
Hi there, Lisa from the Downtown Dundas BIA. You already answered one of my questions. I was wondering if the full report was available. I was curious to know if the months of the survey that you showed for downtown, if that was a full year worth of parking, but if it's in the report, I'll wait and read it myself, unless others are curious.
So just to answer that question, so when we do parking surveys for utilization, it's just capturing a moment in time.
Yeah.
So we would have done it over about a 2-week period to capture, what those peaks in demand are and what the averages are. So it's not a year's worth of data.
All right, so it's not a year average, it's those 2 weeks in time. All right. What's the end date for commenting or sending new comments?
Well, we're hoping to go back to council with our final recommendations sometime, I believe in late summer, Brian, if you wanted to confirm.
Yeah, through the chair, we'll either be going back in August or September. I mean, we still got a little bit more consultation to do with a few other groups, and depending on the feedback we get, hopefully we can bring it back sooner rather than later.
Okay, 'Cause
Oh, I would,
just wanna-
sorry, to answer the question, I would say, Amanda, maybe 2-3 weeks shouldn't be a problem if that timing is appropriate, even the end of June.
End of June? Okay, great. Um,
Is that it, Lisa?
I have one more question if it's okay.
Mhm.
And it's not related to the report. Is there currently curbside pickup allowed? Like, is there a 15-minute grace period? We had it for a while. Never got an official, it's done now or it's continued. So just curious. So I can tell my members.
So the 15-minute grace period that we were offering as sort of advertised during last sort of summer, fall, as a COVID-19 measure through the EOC was stated very publicly. Overall, as from an enforcement perspective, we always offer a grace period in enforcement. So that would continue to happen regardless. But as part of our curbside management strategy, that's something that we would be looking to add as a permanent practice. It needs to be signed appropriately. So this is what makes it was a temporary measure last year to help facilitate. We'd like to continue it, but without proper signage, it's not helpful to the BIAs or to HMPS. And so this is something that we would be looking to put forward and go back to council through our curbside management strategy. So that effectually will be a part of that strategy, but it's not a publicly advertised program as of today. We just have a grace period through enforcement that we will continue to do to facilitate curbside pickup in one way or another. But it's not fully advertised because it's not bylawed properly. It doesn't have the right signage. So all of those things will be part of our comprehensive curbside management strategy.
Okay. All right. So I heard, yes, we currently have a curbside pickup 15-minute grace period for customers.
So it's a 10-minute grace period from an enforcement perspective.
Okay.
We've always, the city of Hamilton has always had that through enforcement. It's a practice that they've been doing for 10 to 20 years. It's not something that is advertised to the public because it's not a proper bylaw, so you can't advertise it in that way. But through what we saw last summer and last fall, we know that there's a need for curbside pickup. We know that there's a need for those 15-minute pickup and drop-off spaces. And so we will continue to put together that comprehensive strategy because it works in conjunction with other things on the curbside. And so we want to present it comprehensively as a whole package.
Yeah. Yeah. With the closures, it is so needed. All right. That is all my questions. Thanks.
Anybody else? Susan?
So I want to thank you guys for presenting to our board and to Waterdown. And I just want to reiterate some of the comments that came out of that presentation. And I think sort of one of our bigger concerns is that we understand the need for a holistic approach, but that this study and the plan seem to be very Hamilton downtown centric. And a lot of the recommendations don't necessarily apply because it's interdependent with transit. And so in those areas that don't have transit, some of the goals and the objectives for the future are really dependent on us having that connectedness to the city for transit. So I just wanted to kind of mention that again, because I know that in speaking with our board, Waterdown was voicing, some of the things that make our situation a bit more unique, as there are other BIAs in sort of more the suburban areas that fall into that too, where some of these things won't necessarily work. And sort of this idea of demand pricing, incentivizing not driving and parking when you have a situation where people from Waterdown can't go to Hamilton without driving. The increased pricing is not necessarily going to change the lack of parking in some of those key areas like Locke Street. So just more comments than questions at this point. And the 2 to 3 weeks on getting our final comments, we've been trying to engage our members, and we've got a steering committee started and we've been sending out surveys, but because of everything that's going on with COVID, it's very difficult for us to pin people down to be able to get enough comments to feed back to you guys in that time frame.
Okay, great. I'll pass the chair to Susan for a second and bring up a couple comments. So I guess the one thing I just want to caution that I think most of us would agree is that we don't want to lose the free weekends and after 6 p.m. free parking. I think especially for downtown, that's super important to a lot of the businesses to have that flexibility, especially on Saturdays when they're open, and that's when they do the large majority of their business. So if that was an option to be taken away, I don't think any of us would necessarily, at least my BI would not be in support of that. And then I guess going back to the losing so many parking spots for development, I thought at one time developers had to provide a certain amount of underground parking in their developments for public parking. I haven't heard anything about that. We have 2 or 3 developments going in now that are taking up parking, and that will definitely impact us. So I just wondered if anybody could speak to that.
Amanda, I can take that if you want. It's Brian Hollingworth here. So as part of new development, there are what we call parking bylaws and regulations that specify the amount of parking that is to be provided, usually on a per unit basis or per floor space basis for commercial uses. There's no formal requirement that X% has to be public. There is an expectation that for commercial uses, it's available to the public. There are, however, in all cases, we do look for opportunities. For example, you may be familiar with the new building that's now opened up at George Street, just north of King Street there. They've got 435 parking spaces that were built into that development as publicly accessible parking. So we will continue to look for those opportunities as new developments come forth.
Okay, great. Anybody else have questions or comments? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder to receive the staff presentation? Lisa and Heidi. Any opposed? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay, on to the agenda. We're into discussion items. So we have an update on the Ontario Improvement Area Association Conference 2021. I guess Carrie's not here, but Julia, are you able to step in?
Sorry, my mute button. Yes, if it's okay with committee, I'm going to keep my camera off. I seem to be having some network issues this morning. But if I do cut out, please let me know. So with the OBIA conference, again, it is the end of September 26th through 29th. Things are progressing. Again, it is going to be a hybrid conference with 150 people in person and then the remainder completely virtual. What OBIA has been working on the last couple of weeks is the option was given to anybody who registered for the 2020 conference to keep their registration and payment in the system, and that would just roll over to the 2021 event. So they've been reaching out to anybody who left their registration dollars in to see what their preference is for attending the conference in 2021, whether it was to be in person or virtual. So I think that has been completed, and I believe that the formal registrations will open early next week. I think they were aiming for a June 14th date, so that'll be available online and through their newsletters, and I'll make sure that I circulate the OBIA newsletter where that is announced, just in case folks aren't on their mailing list. I know most of us are, but if there is an interest to register for that conference, that should be opening next week, which is great, and they'll have their early bird rates available. The schedule is being finalized, and the host committee is meeting this week to continue work on the mobile tours for the BIA. So to get a little bit more information for all of you, we will have OBIA staff in attendance at our host committee meeting on Thursday. We'll get a little bit more information on what the expectations are for the mobile tours, and then share that with everybody who has expressed an interest in hosting tours during the conference. So please stay tuned for that. And then as well, we're finalizing the Sunday afternoon activities, which right now is going to include a brewery tour of a few of our breweries in Hamilton, likely some karaoke, and then we're looking at some other activities close by, possibly escape room or axe throwing for just some fun Sunday activities. So things are progressing with the conference, and we'll have much more information on the mobile tours following our host committee meeting this Thursday. So please stay tuned for that. And that is my very brief update on the OBIA conference.
Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the discussion? Emily and Susan. Was there any opposed? Carried. Okay, great. So now we're on to Julia again for a verbal update from Julia, Business Development and BI Officer.
Thanks,
Go ahead,
guys.
Julia.
So I will go quickly through my updates. As everybody around this table knows, word spread like wildfire yesterday. We are entering their new reopening framework, step 1 on Friday. And so essentially, I know I've seen many of your newsletters go out, but a reminder that that enables outdoor gatherings up to 10 people, outdoor dining, for up to 4 people per table. There's no indoor dining, but outdoor dining is permitted. And patio permissions, it enables basically the size of your patio, 1 person per 1.1 meters squared of space. So restaurants can expand to that size. Our outdoor dining districts is still open. We are accepting applications. I will say I did a quick count yesterday, and so far this year we have already surpassed the total number of applications we had last year. So that's really good news. So beyond outdoor dining, essential retail is able to increase their capacity to 25%, and non-essential retail can now open and will be permitted for 15% capacity, which is fantastic. As well, outdoor activities, training, personal training, day camps, and camping is permitted under step 1. Of course, the limitations are no indoor dining, personal care services not able to open yet, and no live music or performing arts, but many of those will be permitted in step 2, and it's a 21-day cycle the province has indicated at minimum before we move in between steps. So again, I know everybody was vigorously searching yesterday and sharing that information, but I did want to make sure that we were all aware. It is exciting news that this opened up a few days earlier than anticipated. Another item that I wanted to bring to the group, I've sent a few emails on this, but I wanted to see if we could get a volunteer from the BIAs to sit at the infection prevention and control table. Previously, our representative around that table was Rachel Braithwaite. As you all know, Rachel has accepted a new position with a different BIA in the Niagara region, so she's no longer with Barton Village. So we do have a vacancy. They do meet weekly on Wednesdays, and it's basically the table where all the new information is shared, all the policies, procedures, graphics, and it's very, up to the minute information. It would be great if we could have a rep around that table. Is there anybody willing to join that group and be the volunteer to sit at that table? Okay, I will go back to them and let them know, unfortunately, the BIAs won't be represented. The chamber sits around that table, so I will work with the chamber to continue to get that information shared. If anybody has time, I understand weekly meetings, it is a commitment. Let me know. We'd be really happy to have somebody sit at that table, and I'm happy to share the information on your behalf as well. So I will go back to public health and let them know.
Susie?
Yeah, Lisa has a comment.
Can I make a comment, Julia? Okay, so the biggest obstacle is the weekly meetings. I had asked you if it was a rotating position possibly, so that none of us have to make that huge commitment to weekly meetings for who knows how long. Did you check into that? Was that possible? And wondering if anyone here left at the meeting would be interested in that? Because I would share
So
that. I would share that responsibility.
yeah, so I did put it forward, but I did want to see, you know, at this table. So I'm very glad that you brought that up. Would there be an interest to do a rotating seat at that table and maybe attend once every 2 months?
Yeah, I think if
Just
it's
me?
like that kind of a commitment, but it's the weekly I can't do. No way.
Was
Okay.
that a yes possibly from Christina? Or
Yeah.
was she?
Yeah, no, I'd consider it if it was rotating. It's just that well, we've mapped out our summer and I can't make that commitment because we booked personal time and, you know, it's
Yeah.
just, I don't want to half commit to something. But if it's rotating, then I can work around our camping times off and stuff.
So Julia, maybe you could put together a tentative schedule and send it out to us and see if that works. Would that work?
I think so. Let me go back to the IPAC team to let them know that there isn't one but multiple reps, and see if we can make that work. I'm sure we can, but I would need to get a bit more information. So leave that with me to report back to you guys in the next few days to confirm that. And if it is something we can do, then I will put the schedule together for everyone. Absolutely.
Can I suggest another option? What if they were to report back monthly to this meeting just with a high level update as to what we may need to know so that we can provide feedback if we needed to?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if the committee wants them to attend monthly, we can absolutely have them do that as a standing member or a standing presentation for sure. I think the IPAC table is, because it's so weekly, it's like up to the minute information. So if it's okay with committee, I would actually recommend having them come monthly, no matter what, even if there is a rep at that table. And then also kind of layer it with that. Would that be okay with everyone?
I think
Yes.
it's important that we keep up to date on that stuff anyways. So I feel like that might be the better option for all of us. And that way we could provide feedback directly to them on our own.
Okay. I agree. Let me go back to them, have them on our monthly meeting and see what we can do about the rotating as well. If that doesn't work out, we know they're coming monthly, and I will continue to work with the chamber and with that group to see if I can get up to the minute information to you guys. So I appreciate the feedback on that, and I think that's a good way to move forward if everyone's comfortable with that.
Yep.
Great. What else? A reminder to please submit, if you haven't already, your proposals for the Shop Local funding by June 30th. This is the $10,000 per BIA that Council had allocated back in December of 2020. A few of you have submitted already, I think over half of the BIAs, but just a reminder, I did want to try to get everything in by June 30th. And likely for those who have submitted, we'll get you that payment prior to the end of the month. And then I'll be circling back with you for receipts and follow up on your projects as we go through the year. So a reminder just to get those funding requests into me. As well, taxation will be finalizing the levy bylaws, which is done on an annual basis to basically permit taxation to place the proportional BIA levy on each of your commercial property owners within your boundaries. Once these are finalized and your assessments are finalized, that's when we can do the calculations for the contribution to operating budget and parking revenue allocations. So depending when those are completed, I'll have more information to you, definitely on your contribution to operating budget in the coming weeks. And so then you can budget accordingly. So that is coming. Those bylaws have been passed recently. So I will get that information to you before the middle of next week. We also, I just wanted to touch on the rapid testing piece. The Chamber of Commerce sent out an email yesterday, a newsletter that talked about the reopening, but also the rapid testing that they will be managing. It is available to all businesses. They do not have to be a member of the chamber. They want to support everyone. There is a webinar this Thursday at 11 a.m. to discuss the step 1 reopening, but also the rapid testing piece. And for those that can attend, that the recording will be available on the chamber site. I will flag it to send that link once it's available so that we are able to all get the information on the rapid testing as we are reopening and there's more and more employees back to work. This is going to be our priority for all of us. And so we will get that information to you to share with your members if you can. But that's great that the chamber's offering that in Hamilton. And then as we move into step 1, a reminder that the COVID concierge service is available. Staff are manning those lines. The phone number is 905-521-3989. And it is hamiltoncovidconcierge.com online. And I've seen many of you shared in your newsletter, so thank you for continuing to push that out. Whenever there's an announcement from the province, we do get a ton of calls and outreach, which is fantastic. So please continue to share that. And those are my very quick updates. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything that I can.
Any questions? Julia, can you send that link for the chamber thing this Thursday?
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit, Susie. What?
Can you send the link for the Thursday webinar?
Yes, I will forward that to everybody right now.
Okay, great.
I will forward the newsletter that it was in, and there is a link about halfway down. So I will send that to everybody as soon as my update is done.
Okay, great. Any other questions, Lisa?
Thank you, Julia. The chamber meeting is the same time as our conference meeting. Wondering, I'm fine listening to the recording after from the chamber, or wondering if moving our conference meeting is an option.
I think we can just listen to it after. I don't think we need to be on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had the OBIA team joining us on our host committee call, and we've had to reschedule one. So unfortunately, it is a bit of a challenge to do that. So hopefully we can listen to the recording after the fact. And if there's additional questions, I can always reach out to the chamber and have them put information together specifically for this group.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Christina?
I know that, thanks, Julia, for all your updates. It's amazing. You didn't touch on this, but I'm just curious, have you heard anything, or has anybody heard anything about the city enrichment grants, and any any decisions made? I got something that it was still being assessed, but nothing definitive yet.
So the grant subcommittee is meeting right now.
Oh, okay.
On a different WebEx channel and having those discussions. So hopefully there will be some more information following that meeting. I know that there is that folks are wondering, but their meeting starts at 9:30. So once we're done here, you're welcome to jump on that live stream and see what's happening. But that's going through today. So very good timing on that.
Okay, perfect. Great. No, because usually usually we hear by May.
Through the chair, Julia, the grant subcommittee report will be going to AFNA next Thursday. So if you want to check the published AFNA agenda, the grants, whatever comes out of the grant subcommittee today should be on that agenda.
Ruby.
Thanks, Angela.
Okay, any other questions for Julia? Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder to receive Julia's update? Lisa and Susan? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, great. So now we're on to statements by members. So we'll just go down the list alphabetically. So Jude Zabo, do you have anything to add?
No, I do not.
New?
Not this morning.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Christina?
Just some really quick updates on stuff happening on Concession Street. So our Sidewalk Sounds, our virtually Sidewalk Sounds kicked off in May. We had Logan Stats and Hashi the Mouthpiece beatboxer performing. The response has been quite amazing, actually. We've had over 4,000 views between Facebook Live and Instagram Live that have accumulated to date. So although it's gone online, it seems to still be getting some great viewership, and tied into that, we are awarding concession bucks to people that comment through the streams. So it's getting money back and people back into our BIA. So that's great. Our next one is happening on June 19. We've got Heather Valley and LT the Monk performing. Some new businesses, Heal Wellness, which is a smoothie bar, is opening up a plant-based burger joint at 576. That place should be opening imminently in the next few days, so we're excited about that. Candyworks reopened their doors post their fire, so we're excited that they are back up and running. That went faster than originally anticipated, and they're actually working on a mural on the front of the building until their permanent window replacement comes in, so it'll add some fun color and excitement to our streetscape. Made You Look relocated into a bigger space. They are now open at 555 Concession Street. And Retrosaurus, our vintage toy store, will be reopening in the next few days at 550 Concession. They also moved into a larger space, so that's exciting. Our Hamilton Mountain Farmers Market will be kicking off this Friday, June 11th. They'll be running every Friday from 3:30 until 7:30. And as well, we started a line of mural puzzles that we are selling in different stores. So far, we've raised $400. It's in part a fundraiser for Neighbor to Neighbor, and we're also giving funds back to the artists that created the murals. So we have over a dozen murals. We picked our 4 most popular, and they've been selling like crazy. So that's been a really fun and exciting project that we picked up and been able to do a little bit of fundraising for the artist community and some community partners. So that's it for me.
Great. Lisa?
Thank you, Lisa from Downtown Dundas BIA. First, I want to say that I love in Julia's update that axe throwing is a casual Sunday afternoon activity. Hilarious. Hamilton, here in Dundas, we just got our hanging baskets, so it's not so nice to have some color on the street. Our planters are coming soon, I am told. I don't have any openings. I am getting a new neighbor where Bee Love used to be is going to be a fishmonger. No idea of the name yet. I don't know who the owner is. It's all a big mystery. They just papered up yesterday, so I'm curious to see how it looks when it's done. I'm so excited that we are entering step 1 on Friday. So excited. I just wish our personal care services could be open. I can't say anything else about that because everybody knows what they're dealing with. Anyway, and on do I have anything happy to end with? No, the hot weather is finally here. Woohoo! Yay! That's all from me.
Okay, great. I'm just going to pass the chair to Christina quickly. I'll go over ours. So for International Village, we have a new coffee shop that opened called One for All Coffee. It's where the former Nutty Butter was. So it's a really beautiful spot, and we're really excited to welcome them. We're all just gearing up for reopening. So just trying to, take it day by day. It's hard to plan anything right now, but we do have some things in the work. We just wrapped up our contest for Spring Up in the Village, where one lucky person won $1,000 in gift cards from the area. So she was really happy with that. I guess our biggest news is that our office is actually moving. So we are moving from our current location at 12 Ferguson to 195 Main Street. So it's under construction right now. So we are actually just moving our stuff temporarily into the office next door until the construction is complete. So we're hoping to be in by August, but we're really excited about having a bigger, more professional space for us there. And our rebrand is pretty much done. We're hoping to do some giveaways once everything is fully back up and opening. And yeah, everything seems to be pretty quiet these days, but I'm hoping that changes very quickly with the stages opening now. So I'll take the chair back and we will move on to Heidi.
Hello, everyone. Well, we just got approval a week and a half ago to have the pedestrianization of Lock Street for Saturdays, which we originally applied for July 3 till September 11, and we're probably going to push that to July 17. I think it's 17, the third week of July, just because with the late approval and raising sponsorship funds, that's what we're working on right now, and we're excited about that. A lot of our business is excited about that, with like a 95% supportive member approval for an event like this. So we're excited. Matson & Co. is leaving Lock Street after many years, and I've heard that Ye Olde Squire is moving into that space there. And Citizen Kid is moving after probably 20 years 15 years in that space, just down the street to where Soleil Shoes was. So, and then Cabbage Brothers Cannabis opened up a couple weeks ago. There's quite a few changes happening over this summer. So yeah, it's going to look different. That's it from me.
Okay, great. Emily?
Not much to report from Ottawa Street. We did have one of our businesses open because it's a food service in the last couple weeks, and we're hoping that with stage 1, we'll finally see the Argyle open, which is our new bar and golf simulator, and is like an absolutely stunning space. So he's been chomping at the bit to be able to open. So we're all really excited about that. Other than that, we're just we had a really successful Mother's Day giveaway with totes filled with items from our stores. So we'll be doing a Father's Day giveaway too next week, and then we're probably going to be doing a big Canada Day giveaway of like celebrating Canada Day at home. So that's kind of our game plan for the next couple months until things really start to pick up and we can really start planning some exciting things for the fall. And my board is starting to play around with the idea of a possible rebrand. It's much more expensive than when they did it the last time 9 years ago. So we'll see if they're warming up to the idea, but that's kind of the more exciting thing on our front.
Okay, great. Susan?
So we have new banners up, and the new banners have our new modified logo on it, which is now out there on our social media, and we're about to get started on the redevelopment of our website, which will sort of be the full implementation of that new branding. So we're excited to see that going out. Our farmers market launched 2 weeks ago. Crazy appetite for this community to participate in something that is a little more normal. We had our highest attendance ever. Other than that, we have a couple of new locations. We have Shea at Home, which is a home decor store that's opening as soon as the doors can open this weekend. We have a sleep net business that is waiting for the reopening as well. They've been ready to go for a while. So we have a few new places coming in as a few are leaving. That's all.
Okay, great. And Tracy?
Hi there, Tracy. I'm just in Westdale setting up our patios, getting ready for the weekend. So we're quite excited for Friday to come. Was in Stony Creek yesterday setting up some patios there. So we're quite excited for Friday in both spots, and just working away at doing what we can do over the next several months. And welcome to Jude from Manchester.
Okay, great. So may I have a mover and a second to receive the statements? Christina and Emily. Any opposed? Carried. Okay, and I guess we are on to adjournment. So may I have a mover and a second for adjournment? So Emily and Lisa. Carried.
Thank you so much today, Susie.
No problem.
Thanks all. Have a great day.
Thanks.